All right, so I've been seeing a lot of people talk about their issues with Marvel Rivals lately, and the developers claim to be looking at the community for feedback, so I figured why not throw my hat in the ring, considering I play this game a lot anyway. In this video, I wanted to go through point by point on the issues the community is facing, my thoughts, maybe a proposed solution or two, and hopefully some laughs along the way. So let's get started. The first thing I wanted to talk about is balance. Now, there isn't much I can say about this in terms of solutions. I've seen discourse around this season. People don't like this season right now. Specifically, Devil Dinosaur. People want him to be nerfed, and honestly, I can see both sides. Some people find Dino very fun to play, and I'm happy for them. We have a lack of tank players to begin with, but I can also see the oppressiveness that Dino provides for simply just being on the battlefield. I mostly play Captain America nowadays, so believe me, there are times where I feel kind of useless, and there are times when Dino gets absolutely shredded and I don't even notice it. I'm not entirely sure what the answer would be for Dino. However, I can say that something has to be done, because all that aside, going up against a Dino as a Vanguard player is just not fun, and this is an issue because once again there are a lack of Vanguard players. I wish there was more of a skill expression to the game, and what I mean by this is, obviously in a hero shooter, the dynamic between all the heroes is sort of a rock paper scissors with your poke, dive, and brawl heroes, and I understand that this is integral for the game's health. However, I would like for, with enough skill, you can overcome an unfavorable matchup. You know, like if I was playing poke and I was getting dove, I would be able to win that matchup if the dive player was just making mistakes and I capitalized off those mistakes. Poke itself already has some issues that kind of makes it not really work that way, with things like their stuns, and they have escape tools, you know, like Hell's Bird or Phoenix's TP. I just feel like it kind of disrupts that balance, and it would be very good for them to address that sort of thing. Yeah, I think this would be a good change, or a good thing to look at, because let's be honest, this game is carried by the fact that it's a Marvel IP game, and people would love to play their favorite hero, but the state of the game doesn't really allow for that sort of thing. I just think it would be more fun for casual players, and would also inspire more creativity in terms of team compositions for those at a higher level. Easier said than done, I know. I'm not the one developing the game. Nerf Black Hat, please. The second thing I would like to talk about is matchmaking. This is something I've seen people not talk about as much anymore, and I'm not really sure why. I will say I think things feel a little different as of late compared to when the issues were really being talked about a few seasons ago. Regardless, I think this is still something worth speaking on. I don't play a lot of ranked, but I can recall a time a few seasons ago when I was queuing up with my duo. It was the infamous rank up game for us. I believe we were going for GM3. We load into the game, we get into the screen where you see all the player cards and everyone's name, and then it froze and kicked us all out. We didn't think too much of it and just queued up again, but this time when we loaded into the game, we realized we were in the same game with the same players. However, the only difference was me and my duo were now put on the opposite team that we were on initially, and then proceeded to get steamrolled. Now, we ended up hitting GM eventually anyways, but I'm sure you can imagine that this just left a sour taste in my mouth. Guang Guang, Double G, NetEase, people over there, please, you guys need to address this, and I hope you haven't forgotten, because I certainly haven't, and I'm sure a lot of players out there haven't. The third thing I would like to talk about is the Cyclone. Dilemma. Now, at the time of me recording this, Cyclops is going to be revealed in 2 days. Cyclops is one of my favorite Marvel heroes. I will play him regardless of whatever role NetEase decides to make him. I just wanted to speak on some things I've seen surrounding his role and maybe have some commentary about the community as a whole. I think the easiest solution would be for Cyclops to be a duelist. That has its own issues, specifically with the roster size and whatnot. But me personally, I would like Cyclops to be a Vanguard, and this is for a few reasons. Firstly, like I said earlier, there are a lack of Vanguard players, and I think having a cool character like Cyclops would hopefully draw more people there. But it would also fix the fact that a lot of the Vanguards don't really have ranged ways to deal damage at range. Now, obviously, you have your Magneto, your Strange, your Penny, but that's not really where their strengths lie. And the reason the biggest reason why I wanted to talk about this is specifically people advocating for Cyclops to be a strategist. Now, before I begin, I would like to say I don't have any negative feelings towards the role, people who play the role or anything like that. I have good amount of playtime on strategist. I have a few lords. So this isn't just me blindly hating on the role like I've seen people do. I don't think Cyclops should be a strategist. And I know people have been pointing to things like the Punch Chronovium and the Battle Pass. And I don't necessarily agree with that because of the actual description, for one. And for two, the biggest reason why people came up with this theory was because of the plus symbol in the Chronovium. However, if you put that plus sign side by side with one of the heal packs from around the maps, it doesn't match up. I don't know if people know this or not. This was one of the first things I did when I first heard about this theory, and it just doesn't look the same. Above all, though, I just don't think it really fits Cyclops as a character. Now, in response to this, I've seen people say things like Cyclops is one of Marvel's greatest strategists. And while that is true, I feel like strategists in Marvel Rivals are strategists in name only. It doesn't really have much to do with anything, honestly. And the second thing I've seen people say is the fact that you could say the same thing about Gambit. However, if you know anything about the comics, before Gambit got a lobotomy, he was able to use his powers to manipulate his cells and heal himself. So it's not far-fetched for him to have been turned into a support. Now let's say, hypothetically, Cyclops is a support. At best, he'd be an off-support reserved for triple support comps like an Adam Warlock, an Ultron, a Mantis. I don't like this idea for a few reasons. Firstly, this would incentivize players to run triple support comps, which nobody likes playing. I've even seen other strategists mains complaining about this. Secondly, it would have that character, only be able to be used in those comps. What about the people who want to play him? Like me, I would love to play him a lot, as much as I can, quite honestly. But yeah, I also think, people saying things like, I hope Cyclops is a strategist so DPS players will be upset or angry or whatever. I think that is a very short-sighted way of thinking. Because at the end of the day, all this friction between people who main these roles, it just doesn't make sense to me. But if we were to go down that route, you could load up a game right now and pick, like Ultron or Adam Warlock, and there will more than likely be someone who will cut on their mic or type in the chat and tell you to swap. And why would you want another character that nobody plays? I think if we are going to have strategists, they should be people who not only make sense for them to heal and things like that, but also, they are good at not being in triple support comps. For example, I think White Fox and Gambit are really good examples of what a support should be. Now, obviously, Gambit has his issues. He needs to be toned down a bit, specifically his ult, I feel. But yeah, like I feel for the support players, because not only is their character pool very small, but you're just limited to playing these select few. So it makes that small roster even smaller. And so I feel for you. However, I just don't think that Cyclops is a good addition. I can list off, like, I think Silver Surfer, for example, would be a great support. Or, I don't know, Forge. Forge would be a great support. I don't know. Yeah, point blank, I just don't feel like Cyclops would be a good addition to the support role. I would also like to say, I don't really understand why everyone is being so negative as of late. I'm all for being competitive, talking trash, or even having pride in the role that you main. Like, I grew up playing those old Call of Duty games that are infamous for having those crazy lobbies with voice chat and whatnot. But a lot of people complain about the negativity in this community and then actively contribute to it, and it just doesn't really make much sense to me. I don't know. Final. I would like to see the developers take a step back for a season or two and take another look at the base game characters. It's quite obvious that characters added after the fact seem to have more depth, and some characters just feel left behind. I would like to see more skin variety, as well as more skins that feature the options to change certain things about the skin, like the most recent Black Cat skin, how you could like change her necklace and her hat, whatever. I would like to see Times Square expand to other iconic locations in the Marvel Universe, like an Avengers Tower or a Baxter Building that you can roam around in. Kind of like PlayStation Home with all its different locations, if you know ball. I think we should switch up team-ups. There haven't been many changes, and a lot of the team-ups are useless. Good team-ups will also inspire new team comps, especially if you do things like have two Vanguards have a team up together. It would incentivize players to play these characters, and would help with the issues we have where people don't want to play a specific role. The PvE mode, I liked Marvel Zombies. I like Blood Hunt, and I can appreciate how it feels like a development, and how it feels more like its own game as opposed to like a side thing you can do. But there are a few issues I have, one being the lack of diversity in the roster. Basically have the same roster as you did in Marvel Zombies, aside from Squirrel Girl. I also think it's just really similar in general. Like, I know they're vampires this time around, but the regular mobs are just very similar to the zombies. I also am not a big fan of the way they went about with gear. The gear drop rates are not very good, and gear is kind of what allows you to be able to progress through these levels, and it's just not very fun. Alternatively, I think they could do things like an Avengers versus Ultron bots, sort of like an Age of Ultron at the end of the movie when they were defending that machine, and they were fighting off all those Ultron bots, or like a X-Men versus Sentinels, things like that, just to switch it up. Ranked, that's a big thing I wanted to talk about. Ranked, the rank point distribution needs to be changed. I think throwers need to be addressed. This has been talked about forever. I haven't really experienced too many throwers, but the fact that these people don't even get penalized, they just get banned for like 15 minutes from ranked. They could just load up a quick match game, and what do you know, they could play ranked again. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Another thing I wanted to address is the fact that you can climb despite having a negative win rate. Like, I've seen players talk about how they feel like they have authority because they've hit Celestial, but then you look at their profiles and it's a 40% win rate. Like you shouldn't even be there. What are we talking about? This also goes into the chrono shields that they added. I just think we just need to keep the game's integrity. I've also seen things about cheaters as of late. Again, not really something I've experienced myself, but that should definitely be addressed as well. And that's really all I think I had to say. Let me know what you think, your ideas, if